Welcome to the inverted upside down. You're listening to Paranormal Now with Alan B. Smith, rebroadcast on the UNX network Thursdays at 11 p.m. Pacific, Fridays at 2 a.m. Eastern.
However you are and whenever you are, welcome, good souls, to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith. Join us as we traverse the cosmic highway of paranormal portals and tantalizing turnoffs. And tonight, the cosmic highway points right back at us here on this planet with our guest tonight, Vuk. He is the host of the Tracing Owl podcast and Darwin's Deviations, and so much more. He has a very interesting mind and a very interesting theory as to what the extraterrestrial presence is, or actually is not. Could there be a connection between the life systems inherent here on Mother Earth and what people experience, see, manifestations, and so much more? And there is not just this extraterrestrial side of this as well, but there's so much more. There are elementals, and there are questions about the meaning of life and spirituality that many find or believe they find answers to in the Gaia hypothesis. I don't know if Vuk feels that way, if he's found some answers that are satisfying to him, but we'll ask him in just a moment. And if you want to get warmed up for this high strangeness conversation tonight, as always, please check out Alien Coffee Bean Coffee. You can get the Paranormal Now discount code for their coffee beans, which are delicious. We buy them whole bean, we grind them up, and we drink them, and we get pumped for the show every week. So if you want to go to aliencoffeebean.com, and when you check out, put in the discount code mystery20, that's all caps, mystery20, so you can get your alien coffee bean fix. That's mystery20. And we're going to jump right into it tonight, because Paranormal Now is now a 1 hour show. So no longer 2 hours. So we are going to not waste any time other than getting weird, and welcome Vuk to Paranormal Now.
Hello, everybody. So 1 hour, man, and a lot of questions to answer.
Oh, you have no idea. You have no idea.
So right off the bat, you already said I am the host of Tracing Owls podcast. I am a podcaster from Bosnia and Herzegovina. That's a country on the Balkan Peninsula in Europe. And I used to work as a biology teacher. So I started podcasting, talking about biology in a more humorous sense, trying to remystify the natural world. And doing this and going into these topics, I kind of got to the Fortean and the paranormal. So I tried to tie in the natural world with the paranormal, which is how I got to what we are going to talk about today. And right off the bat, I need to say, and this is something I say every time I appear on these podcasts, we are not going to talk about the Gaia streaming service. So if anybody is...
Do you think that is a sacrilege that they've called their streaming service Gaia?
I don't think it's a sacrilege, because what we are going to talk about today, the Gaia hypothesis, was also very controversial when it came out because of the use of the word Gaia in it, which is a personification of Mother Earth in Greek mythology.
Yeah, that's true. And also I want to add a comment in YouTube. Alexis G says, wow, the Earth is talking. Proof the planet is alive. Referring to your icon. So for those who are listening, Vuk is joining us from a clandestine location. So he is remaining a man of mystery all through the night tonight. Yeah.
Okay, so I decided to put the planet Earth because today's episode is not about myself. It is rather about us, and by us I don't mean humans only, but everything that is living on this planet. So we're going to talk about planet Earth today, and
Yeah, I
maybe a
really,
planetary consciousness.
yes, I really appreciate your approach. Now, really quick, right off the bat, do you believe that aliens, that people recognize as aliens, are extraterrestrials, that they're from off planet?
No. So I am very vocal about my opposition to the extraterrestrial hypothesis.
Mm-hmm.
My personal leanings are more towards the psychosocial hypothesis.
Then that's why in the show description I made sure that we use the A word as much as possible.
Well, recently I put out an episode called The A Word where I
Yeah.
quote alien to explain everything.
Mm-hmm. But here's the thing, though: alien, by definition, doesn't necessarily mean a biological entity. The other meaning for alien is something from outside your immediate reality or your world, something that's strange or different. So alien can be applied to a multitude of meanings.
Yes, but if we want to talk about the strange and the wonderful and weird and otherworldly, we don't need to jump so many steps ahead and look outside of the planet, because we still are not aware of what the planet has to offer. And potentially, per the Gaia hypothesis, the planet has a whole Gaian consciousness to offer us that we may be already a part of.
Okay, before we go down that road, tell us what your take is on the Gaia hypothesis. What does that mean to you, and
Okay.
what are its implications?
So the Gaia hypothesis essentially is the idea that planet Earth is a superorganism or super entity. That is the more mystical interpretation, but it is no longer just a hypothesis, it is a theory. It is a scientific theory, thus a proven fact. And throughout the years, scientists have stopped referring to it as the Gaia theory and started calling it Earth system science. What the Gaia hypothesis is and what this super entity would be is a self-regulating cybernetic control system. Now, when people hear control system, and most of us read Jacques Vallée's books, and he also talks about control systems, most people misinterpret what that means. Most people misinterpret what cybernetic means, thinking it's robots and technology. It is essentially a self-regulating system of negative feedback loops, or rather metabolism. So Gaia would be either a super entity or a whole system put in place to keep the Earth in homeostasis, in metabolic homeostasis.
Right. Well, a system in and of itself, it has to be self-sustaining, right?
Yes.
And so there is an element of control that totally makes sense. But what is it? I mean, are we thinking about it in terms of ancient mythology, and that there is like a goddess-like spirit to the earth, or is there a masculine spirit? How do you conceive of this?
So that's the problem with using the word Gaia, because we then interpret it in a very New Age fashion. But what I mean, per science, if we are not going to talk about mystical aspects, per science, the Gaia entity or this control system is the result of coevolution through millions and millions of years of the living part of the planet interacting with the non-living part. So per neo-Darwinism, classical neo-Darwinism, living organisms react to changes in their environment and adapt. And that's that. The environment changes randomly, and living organisms need to change and adapt. But per the Gaia theory, it is a mutual exchange. So if the environment changes, life adapts. Life adapting now changes the environment, and so on and so on and so on. A co-evolutionary bond is formed between the biosphere and the geology of the planet. And through millions and millions of years and divergence of all species on this planet into many different various forms of life, which can, fill out any kind of nook and cranny and void on this rock we're all rotating on. Gaia.
Yeah.
Gaia as, this super entity, which is just a conglomeration of all life on Earth,
Mhm.
has a lot of cards in play now, a lot of genetic resources, a lot of different forms of expression of her own being.
You still referred to her as her.
Yes, and that's how we as humans personify the
Mhm.
natural world, and that may tie into my views on aliens.
Interesting. So, do you think that there is a greater system that goes beyond the Earth, and that the Earth is a part of, or is the Gaia system itself a sort of isolated system?
So the Gaia system itself is something that we can prove scientifically. If
Mm.
we go beyond that, we are going into woo territory, which I am totally open to go into. I
Mhm.
personally believe that this goes above and below, that there are, subatomic particles which can be whole universes and galaxies, but also that universes and galaxies can form different superorganisms. And it
Mhm.
is just a loop, an endless infinity loop of systems within systems within systems. There are scientific there is scientific evidence to prove all this. Within, let's say, if we compare the system of a cell, the system of colonial organisms, how they specialize and form multicellular organisms, how multicellular organisms form conglomerations of superorganisms, like, let's say, the Portuguese man of war is not one organism, it is many organisms composing one giant colonial organism, and so on and so on.
So, is there any other evidence that goes beyond just looking at the balance of symbiosis in an observable world? Is there an invisible world, whether it would be, in other um, forms of detection, whether light waves, microwaves, um, radio waves of any kind, where we can detect any kind of anomalous signals or behaviors that
Mhm.
would also support this?
I'm not sure, because that is not normally the field of study of biology, and I am
Mhm.
a biologist. So we
Okay.
study
Yeah.
the material objective reality. Anything that is beyond material is something that I am very new in, so I'm still trying to figure that out.
Understood. So imagine if scientists, a very conservative atheist scientist of, let's say, 1850,
Mhm.
and you were to tell them there are waves of energy that are protruding from the human head, from the brain itself, and on these waves of energy is information, and you
Mhm.
can detect this information, and you can actually affect these waves with technology. They would probably think you're in the woo woo land, wouldn't they?
Yes, but I'd also like to point out that we as humans are carriers of memes and symbols and Jungian archetypes and all of this stuff. These are
Mhm.
tools that allow us to interpret, if you really believe in radio waves or information via signals. You need a device, let's say the human brain, which has all the tools in place that are there to provide us the ability to interpret these signals. So
Do
is
you
the
think,
information the signal, or is the information already in our heads? It just needs to be unlocked.
is there anything meaningful in this at all, or is this just objective science for you?
For me, there is something meaningful. The meaning of life for me is expression.
Uh-huh.
Biologists want to say it is reproduction and whatever. I think reproduction of biological life is just a necessity in order to sustain the ability to evolve and express yourself in various different ways. The meaning is to fill out voids.
The meaning is to fill out voids, meaning the
Mhm.
universe itself is a void, and we're participating in filling that out, or something else?
Filling out physical voids, but also filling out imaginal abstract voids as well.
Uh-huh. And you think that the alien the extraterrestrial is something akin to that abstract?
Yes, I do. So I talked about these ideas, and for the listeners, I'm not married to any of my ideas that are beyond science. Anything that cannot be proven by science is just speculation. But I like to believe in some ideas. So I believe
Sure.
that if there are Jungian archetypes and if there are symbols ingrained into a collective unconsciousness, as Carl Jung liked to write about,
Hmm.
um, if that is a product of natural selection, is it really natural selection or is it Gaian selection? If Gaia, as a super entity that we are all a part of, we are the cells of something greater than ourselves, just as the cells compose our bodies, Um,
Sure.
if we compose a super entity and let's say our behavior is, I don't want to say controlled, that's conspiracy territory, but rather swayed. Our behavior is swayed, and the evolution of our behavior is regulated by the control system of this giant entity. Then our behavior is for the purpose of the giant entity.
And okay, the entity being Gaia.
Yeah.
Okay. And all animals on this planet share the same DNA. I know this is something that I'm pretty sure, I think you've talked about before in your podcast.
Yeah.
So what does that mean to you when making the argument that extraterrestrials
Mhm.
always tend to look like human beings?
Well, I do not believe in the physicality of extraterrestrials. I believe extraterrestrials are psychic projections, are a psychological phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know if it is interaction between us and an other that manifests into mirror reflections of ourselves. But we
Yeah.
will always project upon the world that which we are or which we strive for. And maybe we are ingrained with these symbologies in our minds to project ourselves upon the universe and the voids out there. So we may
Mm-hmm.
be enticed to look further, because if we, let's say, go off this planet and start exploring the galaxy, with ourselves, we are carrying the essence of Gaia, not just us, but all germs within us and around us. If we
Well,
go terraforming planets, we are not
yeah,
terraforming for ourselves. We are terraforming to farm fungi, algae, bacteria, and so on.
yeah. Well, you mentioned fungi. Is it possible that Gaia isn't the only Gaia that there is, that life on Earth was planted
Mhm.
by seeds of some sort that carried DNA and the instructions for life onto our planet? And if that's the case, then Gaia didn't originate here on Earth, right?
It is possible that goes into panspermia territory.
Mm-hmm.
This idea I have of, let's say, Gaia wants to entice us to explore the galaxy, so uh, we may be the vectors of panspermia of some other planet.
Right.
That could have totally happened with our own planet and life on Earth, because all life on Earth currently has the same structure of DNA. Because, I mean, per science and per Darwinian evolution,
Mm-hmm.
every living thing on this planet, be it a human or an earthworm or a plant or a fungus or a lichen or algae, anything,
Mm-hmm.
everything has a common ancestor.
Right. Whatever that original amalgamation of molecules or atoms that started this process. As a biologist, do you think that we really have a grip on how life started?
No, I don't.
You don't, but do you think science has a grip on it?
Okay, science can explain 1% of reality, but there is 99% of reality that is outside of the scope of science.
Right. So is there room to then believe in the supernatural if there's so much that we don't know?
of course there is room, but if there is a supernatural or another or paranormal, that is
Mhm.
outside of the scope of science. And I do believe that it is pretty redundant to try and scienceify the paranormal or try to explain it via science, because we are dealing with something abstract and imaginal and very closely tied to our perception of reality, which is not
Mhm.
technically accurate when you compare our perception or subjective perception with the objective reality around us. There are animals out there which can see different colors that we can't,
Mhm.
just because their eyes are adapted to register certain wavelengths of light.
Yeah. So we just haven't keyed in. Now, have you ever done psychedelic?
No.
But you are familiar with the effects of, psilocybin or
Yes.
DMT. So what's happening there? What are these visions that people are having? These sort of like, goddess-like, serpent-like visions, these elf-like
Hmm.
manifestations. How does that connect to the Gaia theory?
Well, if we evolved and from Gaia, and if we are all humans, and if we have been biologically ingrained with archetypal symbology and imagery, we
Mhm.
all, from just being humans and sharing the experience of what it is to be a human, carry with ourselves in our minds these entities and monsters. So
Mhm.
if somebody takes a psychedelic, they're invoking possibly a primordial symbol in their mind, not necessarily seeing a real entity, but rather invoking. I like to think of concepts and ideas as living beings. They can also spread, they can also evolve.
Mhm.
I told you already about language. Language is not something tangible. You can't prove language exists materially and objectively, but it is something that evolved alongside us, um, is an entity on its own, diverges, assumes different forms where people migrate throughout the world, throughout history, and so on and so on.
We have a comment from Jordan. He says, "I think psychedelics strip away the layers that hide the archetypes that we're ingrained with."
Yeah, yeah,
And
exactly.
is it that simple? And if that's the case, where do the archetypes come from? And why do we all have the same ones?
Well, if I'm going to talk about the Gaia hypothesis, I'd say they are in our minds. So we may have a framework of behavior that is uniform throughout all of humanity. So we may fulfill some kind of Gaian purpose. Let's say the example of imagining aliens out there. So we may be enticed to strive to be as advanced as some other civilization out there. So we may go out there. So I don't know, maybe to spread the seed of Gaia or to spread
Mhm.
the influence of Gaia.
Now, outside of like Greek mythology, um, are there any mythological systems or religions that you think got it close, have it pretty close to being right of what the Mother Nature, the Gaia system is?
I'm not sure because I'm not a religious scholar. I would say maybe
Okay.
Buddhism, but I don't know anything about Buddhism. So I'd be appropriating, just like I am appropriating the name Gaia to
Yeah.
explain my own theories.
So when an experiencer, an alleged alien abductee,
Hmm.
is sharing their story, and they can support it and say, someone saw a UFO over my house, or what have you, around the same time that I experienced this event.
Okay.
Wouldn't that scientifically be uh, good evidence to support that there's a real physical actual phenomena occurring to that person, that it's not in their mind alone?
Okay.
If somebody else can observe, especially when you have multiple observers of an event.
Okay. But if there is a collective unconsciousness, then we are all connected psychologically and imaginally.
Okay, so does that mean you don't think we have any legitimate video evidence of UFOs?
Of UFOs, yes, but of extraterrestrial flying vessels, I don't.
Okay, let me rephrase it to objects that are unexplainable using our understanding of aerodynamics and physics.
Yeah, certainly.
So there's no video evidence of that, or there is?
There is, yeah. There may
Okay.
be, yeah.
Interesting. So how do you feel about those videos, the UAPs that were released by ATIP?
Okay, so right off the bat, I need to say I am from Bosnia.
Mhm.
So I don't dwell too much on stuff by the American government because I think it is very problematic to suggest that the whole world needs to be looking at the American government to serve them information on a platter.
What? Vuk, I can't believe you. I know exactly how you feel. It's kind of like, we lived in New York City. New Yorkers think the world revolves around them too. But there's a wide world out there of UFO cases and footage that goes well beyond that. But the reason I ask you specifically about those UAPs is because, there's great footage out of Chile, Brazil, and what have you, Mexico. But the gimbal, for instance, has multiple sensors. So it's not just a video, right? It's not
Yeah.
one sensor. It's not two. There are multiple sensors that are measuring these craft, and that's why I find it most fascinating. Because if they are indeed breaking the laws of aerodynamics, then what's going on there? Is it still possible then that that's a manifestation of Gaia?
Well, if something is breaking the laws of physics, then obviously it does not work within the laws of physics. So I don't have answers to physical evidence of the presence of paranormal phenomena. But if there is real physical evidence, and it would be disingenuous of me to say that it's all just psychological,
Mhm.
I'd think there is a form of manifestation. Not necessarily that aliens are traversing the galaxy and coming here in vessels, but rather this is something that is originating from the planet or from us, uh, or an egregoric manifestation. Because explain to me why we are seeing Tic Tacs now, but in the 50s we were seeing UFOs with portholes. Why would
Mhm.
there
Mhm.
be porthole windows on something that's traversing the galaxy? And why in the 1800s there were airships? The phenomenon assumes the form of the contemporary historical perception.
Well, I think that's true, but I also think that one can overlay their own beliefs onto something that is so bizarre. They don't even know how to psychologically process it. So they project. Like some people will say, oh, UFOs or aliens or demons, right?
Yeah.
Based on their, religious mythology. So I think that that's possible. And also, there have been, sightings of triangle craft, saucer type craft,
Mhm.
cigar craft, all these different shapes throughout the millennia, really. And so I think that there is some consistency there. Now, yeah, totally. During the 1950s and 60s, you had like the whole Space Brothers phenomena, and these were like basically human beings,
Yes.
right? And then now you have reptilians, you have grays. So that aspect I always found a little odd. Um, and I do wonder if a lot of those reports from the 50s and 60s were really people fabricating stories.
I do believe the contactee movement was there was a lot of fabrication, but I do believe if you look at it globally, there is a real phenomenon being present there, a psychological phenomenon. These people were touched by something.
Hmm.
They only need a certain nudge, You don't need a lot to spark something within a person, and then you are sent down a rabbit hole where you wallow in the mud of the paranormal and supernatural. I don't know
Hmm.
why. I like to think that maybe the paranormal is there to bring forth our true selves and spark ego death in a way.
Ego death. How do you
Mhm.
mean?
In a way, bringing forth the true self where you can be more open to the oneness of the universe around you.
Gotcha. So, what do you think Gaia is trying to tell us through not just extraterrestrial visions, but all of these high strangeness paranormal experiences?
That we are not the dominant species of this planet.
Wait, so okay, so if we're not the dominant species, then if these other things aren't real, then what other species are you speaking about?
About the 3 million other species on this planet.
Okay, just
We are
life as
all
we know it. Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
We don't need to imagine another advanced species out there because we
Mhm.
are outnumbered 3 million to 1. There, like, if you look at the biomass of bacteria, I can't remember the certain specific numbers, but when I was
Mhm.
researching this, the biomass of all bacteria on Earth is 72 billion tons of carbon, let's say. But the
Mhm.
biomass of all humans and animals on Earth was just 2 compared to
Mhm.
72. So who
Yeah.
is the dominant species then?
Right. And talking about like mycelia and mushroom underground, uh, there's a whole world that works in magical ways on its own, right? The way the plants send signals to each other, um,
Yes.
and share nutrients, and that all that's the symbiosis there. So, are you saying that Gaia is saying that what we're out of sync, that we're not in balance anymore?
Well, I don't know. I really don't know. I can speculate. Either it is, sending ecological messages, oh, don't destroy the earth. I mean, the Space
Mhm.
Brothers had messages to stop your nuclear weapons and wars. The uh, visions in Fatima or other Marian visitations have the similar messages.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, fairies in the Middle Ages constantly attacked people who were desecrating nature. It can be that, or it
Mhm.
can be to spark creativity. I am more focused on the aspect that the paranormal is there to act as some kind of muse and to sway our behavior, not in just negative ways, but positive ways as well.
Gotcha. I have a question from Anonymous, and the question is, how do you feel about the fact that more people are choosing not to have children as the world population continues to grow? Could this be the influence of Gaia?
Yes, exactly. And I am one of those people.
Really? Wow.
Yes.
Okay, so then you think that that's an influence of Gaia, that people are less inclined to have children?
I think, well, everything is an influence of Gaia. All behavior of all 3 million species on this planet is
Mm,
influence of Gaia. You don't have to see Gaia as an entity that is controlling us or a god or something. It
for
is
sure.
just a corporation of all life on Earth. And when you have people in corporations, you can divide the corporation into many different sectors where you have
Mhm.
workers specialized for certain tasks and whatnot. It is a whole system that is there to be self-sufficient.
Alexis G says the dominant species in Earth is the Earth. Gaia is alive.
Yes.
Uh, Good point. Now, is that how we should conceive of it? A lot of spiritualism would say that, um, you know, we are all one, right? That God is us, we are God. Is
Mhm.
that true in the sense of Gaia that we're inseparable? Buddhists believe, similar to what you were saying earlier, that when you start breaking down the individual, the self, and you keep getting smaller from the bigger organs to the smaller and smaller down to the molecules and the cells, and then there's nothing there, right?
Okay.
Um, is that how you conceive of it? That there is no separation, really?
There is no separation. We are the ones who are separating everything artificially in order to catalog and better understand the universe around us because we have these giant heads that are full of memes and symbols.
Is there something positive we can do for Gaia in our space exploration?
In our space explore, okay, so I don't know, we are in the position to know what is positive for Gaia. We cannot know the agenda of every form of life on this earth conglomerated into a giant corporation.
Sure.
We're just the
But we,
workers.
yeah, but we do have a sense, right, that there is a balance here on Earth. We know at least that much,
Mhm.
that there's a system. We can observe that. We can see that, and we can respect that, or
Yes,
not.
but ultimately we will be traversing the galaxy for our own benefit. But the thing is, maybe this selfishness
Mhm.
is there to entice us to go outside, so we may be vectors for something that we are not even thinking about.
Right. I mean, that's kind of how I feel about any assumption of any religious belief system or metaphysical belief, is that I'm not smart enough, and I don't think humans have the capacity quite yet to fully understand what our purpose is, if there is one. Is there a greater consciousness, a God? But I do think that we have practices that can help us tune in to something that's there. Do you do anything yourself to kind of tune in to Gaia as you perceive it?
No.
No. You podcast.
I can say my podcasting is kind of a spiritual thing that I do. But if you go listen to my podcast, all my credibility will just go out the window.
Well, I do.
But
I do enjoy your podcasts, and you're challenging of ironically conventional thinking within the paranormal world.
well, the thing is, if you have some kind of it is, everybody has their own ritual. You don't need to buy somebody else's ritual from con artists who are scamming you to earn money. You can have your own ritual. The main thing is focusing your intent. And whatever you need to do to focus your intent, you need to put sage or crystal or something, or you need to, let's say, podcast, or you need to play music on a guitar. All of that is magic in a way. All of that
Yeah.
is focusing your intent and conjuring chaos magic.
We have a question from Alexi. Does natural selection and evolution also apply to Earth, the universe?
Okay, so how I see it is natural selection may be the same as Gaian selection, because
Mm.
when we talk about natural selection, it is on the level of individual species. But if we are talking about the oneness of all species on Earth, then the oneness is regulating how species diverge and evolve for its own benefits. So it may have more diverse genetic resources. So it is not the survival of a single species, though a single species is ingrained with instinctual needs to survive for its own benefit, but also for the benefit of being harnessed as a genetic resource for the oneness of the planet.
We have a really important question from Mothman46. Where can I get Tracing Owls merch?
I am notorious for actually doing everything kind of selflessly, and I am against merch on my own show.
You're anti-merch?
Yes, I am anti-merch.
Are you going to stand by that forever?
Yes, probably, because
Really?
even if I want to sell merch, I'm in Bosnia, so there is no way for me to even make money off anything.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
You shouldn't be sorry. It is a good thing to not have the burden of that thought in your head, and just think I can go proceed to do this selflessly because I have no other way to do it.
And there's also, I mean, I don't have merch, right? And it's a lot to deal with, and that's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in these topics and having conversations, and that takes up enough time as it is. Jordan Heath says we probably have as much awareness of Gaia's best interest in the way that white blood cells are aware of ours. That's interesting.
Yes. So I always, and Jordan is a collaborator of mine constantly. We talk about these topics a lot. I always bring up, does your individual cell know that you exist? And do you ever feel how your individual cell feels? Now, I do believe that higher entities do not, maybe are not even aware of lower entities, but rather there is a whole system in place of systems within systems where they can communicate with each other through these middlemen. Let's say your cells communicate with you through your organs and organ systems, but you do not communicate with your individual cell. And your individual cell can be perceived as an organism for itself. That's how multicellularity evolved. I can spend 2 hours now talking just about that. But how multicellularity evolved is single-celled organisms started grouping together into colonies, and now they have the good life. They're living together, avoiding predators, utilizing the natural resources in better ways. And over time, they started specializing, so they became more dependent on the whole system itself. Just like a corporation, you're not going to have a corporation of thousands of workers doing everything that the corporation does. You're going to specialize workers for certain tasks, but they are all interdependent. You need one worker to do this, so the other worker can do this, so on, so on.
Does that mean something like Bigfoot or Sasquatch or Yeti is one of those things?
What exactly? You mean a flesh and blood creature or something else?
Whatever it is, what do you think it is? Is it serving a role within a system?
I think it serves a role within a human conscious system as a symbol or a pop cultural figure. But I do believe, let's say, the orang pendek could be an actual flesh and blood creature. But the Bigfoot is something much bigger. It is influencing us psychologically and sociologically. It does not need to influence us biologically.
So you think it's strictly existing within our mindscape? It's not physical at all. Sasquatch, Bigfoot.
I am still on the fence about that.
Gotcha. Because Jane Goodall is open to the idea, right? I'm sure you've probably, if not, then you can look it up on YouTube.
But we just don't have fossil evidence. But it is possible. It is possible through the Bering Strait that some kind of ape or descendant of Gigantopithecus could have moved over to North America.
Yeah.
But let's say, okay, so you are aware that every country and every culture has its own Bigfoot in a way. Hairy hominid. How do you explain mystery? 100 different species of mystery primates all over the world, but we don't have any evidence of any of them. So I would say it is like that because it is more of an archetype within the social unconsciousness, and it is seen all over the world because we are all human, despite what Nazis want to believe. We all share the same symbology.
Right. That's the thing. If this was 1970, it'd be different. But after all these decades, we still haven't found the remains of a Bigfoot. And there has been some somewhat interesting hair samples that have been tested, but nothing, at least to my understanding, that's been definitive of a new species. Is that explainable? The argument that we hear is that, well, bears can go and die off somewhere, and then the organisms within the soil just break it down, and bugs.
Well, everything is possible, but the what we are talking about is a folkloric figure. We don't know what a Bigfoot is. Even if we do believe it is a flesh and blood creature, we don't have it. We don't have it cataloged. We don't know what it is. It can be anything. What we are talking about is the folkloric figure and the pop cultural figure that is influencing us in more abstract ways. But I do believe entities can exist in various different planes of existence. You can have a flesh and blood creature, but you can have a folkloric creature and a magical creature and sociological symbol and so on and so on. I mean, look at any animal in the world. In all cultures, there has been folklore associated with the animal and folkloric monsters that were inspired by these animals, but also the animals being used as symbols in magic and alchemy and so on. So the same animal exists in different planes as different roles, not just the biological creature.
And what is your take on elementals?
Elementals, and you mean like the animistic concept of spirits associated with land or natural phenomena?
Correct, yes.
I think it is, I mean, our way of understanding the universe by personifying natural forces, but I don't think that's bad. I am open to the possibility of elementals being a thing, but then you would need to go into how does it integrate with the overarching Gaian consciousness, you know? Is it really a spirit of the land, or is it an extension of the overarching consciousness that is associated with the land? Because I am of the unification theory that everything paranormal and mystical has the same origin.
There are people that believe that the so-called, we'll use the word aliens, the A word, that they're actually not, that they live perhaps underwater or in a parallel dimension. Is that not in the realm of possibility? Not probability, but possibility.
It is, but if you're talking about bacteria or fungus or something like that, I do not see. It took quite a while for us to evolve as bipedal humanoids, carriers of memes with two hands able to manipulate the world around us. That is not a shape that can be formed in those types of circumstances by evolution.
Yeah, of course, physics, quantum physics theory, depending on whose you look at, postulates that there might be multiple dimensions. If there are multiple dimensions, could there be other sentient beings of some sort, not necessarily hominids, right?
So
but some other consciousness.
Multiple dimensions actually already exist in biology, but it is totally different than the physicists want to think. Physicists think in terms of anthropocentrism. Okay, so let's...
Yeah, please explain that. Yeah.
Okay, let's look at this. So the idea behind parallel dimensions is every single choice you make in your life spawns a different timeline or something like that. Does anybody ask? So we have 72 billion tons of carbon of bacteria on this earth. Is every single cell of bacteria constantly making decisions? Is every decision of every bacteria spawning a different timeline? Why is it always dependent on humans? So I do not like parallel universe theory because I don't like theories which rely on the notion that you disregard all the 3 million other species on this planet.
But how is it disregarding?
Because then it would go into so much complexity of every single bacteria, every single fungus, every single animal and plant on this earth making choices every day and spawning so many different timelines.
Oh, sure. I mean, that's one idea. But don't you think it's possible that there are more static dimensions that are...
There are. So something people don't think about is the microcosmos that we are surrounded with. Bacteria and single-celled organisms live within a totally different dimension and perception of time than we do. The dimension does not need to be parallel dimension, does not need to be horizontal, but rather vertical within space and within perception of time. Let's say an amoeba lives for one day. It has its own perception of time. We live in years. Plants can live in centuries, like redwood forests, or a Gaia, which can live in eons. And we all overlap and exist within each other, but have different perceptions of reality and time.
So many of us are really enthusiasts about space exploration and what we can learn out there with the Webb telescope, for instance. Does that excite you at all? And is there anything to be learned about the Gaia system that you believe is, the reality that we live in? Is there anything
Okay.
to be learned about it by looking out there?
Exactly, because the guy who formulated the Gaia hypothesis, James Lovelock, was working for NASA when he formulated the theory, because they were sending rovers to Mars and trying to find biomarkers to search for life on Mars. You're not going to chase down aliens. You're going to look for, let's say, methane emissions. And if there's a lot of methane, then surely there need to be living creatures creating the methane. So once NASA started, sending stuff up in the air, and we could look at the planet in a whole, then these ideas started sprouting. Like, wow, now we see that we are part of a giant system that is so complex, and yet everything is kept within the same boundaries. Like oxygen levels are always 21%. Something is regulating that.
Regulating. Okay, we have a few minutes left.
Okay.
I feel like we could keep on going, and I love chatting with you, Vuk. So thank you so much for coming on.
No problem.
Is there anything that you think we really should touch on that you'd like to share?
Well, all I want to say is that there is no need to look up at the stars until we start more in-depthly understanding what we already have. I think it's greed on our side to just constantly be looking for the next best thing, but ignoring what we already have here with us. And what we already have is potentially an overarching super consciousness that we are a part of.
Well, I can say that I feel the most at peace when I'm in nature, or nighttime staring up at the stars, which is a part of my reality here on Earth, or being with love of my life, and that's where I find the most peace. And I guess that when we are looking outward, I really do think that sometimes we're actually trying to find ourselves and our place in the here and now as well.
Well, we should start looking inward more and being one with not just ourselves, but with everything that lives alongside us and everything that lives within us. We are not just ourselves. Like, the human body is composed of so many different organisms that are not human, and we are, a collective consciousness of all of this.
Yeah. How many podcasts do you have, Vuk?
2. I used to do Darwin's Deviations, which is more of a like South Park style Magic School Bus parody show. But now I do Tracing Owls, which is more me without characters, more me just blogging and saying what's on my mind. And sometimes I have guests and we go into what the paranormal means to us.
Right. Are you an atheist?
Yes.
You are. Okay. And what's your definition of an atheist?
Somebody who does not believe in a Judeo-Christian God.
Okay. Well, that's
that.
pretty simple. Yeah. I mean, that leaves the door wide open. Would you then consider yourself like a little agnostic as well in regard to spirituality and energy systems?
Well, of course, like when I say I'm an atheist, I mean the literal definition of the word no gods, but I do not say, oh, there cannot be spirituality or mysticism or anything paranormal. It's just I am opposed to anthropocentrism. I'm opposed to projecting the meaning of the universe around you in humans, in humanity. And that's what Judeo-Christianity does. A God is somewhere out there, and he is showing his grandiosity to you through nature. I believe nature shows us her grandiosity, which is hers and not somebody else's.
Right. Well, is that okay? So something like a therianthrope, is that us appropriating nature and making it anthropocentric, or is that us humbling ourselves and a symbol of our connection to nature and respecting it?
It depends on how you practice that. I think nature religions like of indigenous peoples is more close to the Gaianist consciousness than what we are doing now with pop culture and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Do you really hate the whole alien thing?
No, I don't hate the alien thing, but I do believe if there are aliens out there, they are smarter than us and they know how to be in tune with their own Gaian consciousness of their own planet.
Ah, interesting. And do you think that they would look like us?
No.
No. Okay. What if it was panspermia? Is there a chance then that shared DNA might cause them to look like
Okay,
us?
but it's not just DNA, it's the ecological factors. We have our sun, but some other solar system has many different suns that influence
Mm,
the gravity and so on of all
true.
life
Yeah.
on that planet. People who do not understand basic biology cling to the idea of a humanoid alien. That is only possible if there is another Earth with just the right conditions like here on Earth.
Well, it also has a lot to do with budget when it comes to shows like Star Trek and Star Wars.
Exactly.
We're so exposed to the idea that aliens are, hominids, or the majority of
And
them
you
are. Yeah.
you cannot portray the hero romancing a giant squid.
Right. It's a little funky. Right. Green
Yeah.
skin and antennas, no problem. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Vuk, thank you so much for coming on tonight. I really appreciate it. Everybody listening, please go check out his podcast. It's really fun, Tracing Isles. I appreciate it, Vuk. And is there a way that people can contact you if they want to share any ideas with you?
Okay, so I use only Twitter and Instagram. You can find me at Tracing Owls on both of those. If you send me any message, I'll probably reply because I'm desperate.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll see you around. Thank you so much and have a good night.
No problem. Bye-bye.
Oh, all right. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us tonight on Paranormal Now on the youtube.com/Mystic Lounge YouTube channel. Of course, this program is rebroadcast on the UNX network Thursday nights, 11 p.m. Pacific time, Friday nights, 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you missed this, you can catch the replay then. And of course, the podcast I will drop tomorrow for anyone who wants to listen on the go. Until next time, everyone, I thank you so much for hanging out, being weird with us, and keeping an open mind to already open-minded ideas. This is Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now, and special thanks to Race Hobbs at KGRA, as well as Margie K. Until next time, live in the mystery.